From EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in Worth Whitehall, Pennsylvania, this is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Good morning and welcome to the debut of Weather Weeklies for the 2024-2025 season. I'm meteorologist Bobby Martrich with EPAWA Weather Consulting, and this is an every Sunday video blog that we do throughout the entirety of winter up through the last threat of snowfall. We don't have anything in the near term to talk about. We always debut this in the first Sunday in November each year because it is the start of our winter programs, or close to it, which began on November 1st. Okay, so that is now started. So our text alert program is now live. The premium form winter program is alive. All that is ready to go. So we have what this does is just covers basically focuses on the long range, focuses on signals, winter storm signals throughout the year. We don't have any of that yet. So what we're going to do today, in lieu of a winter outlook, which we don't do, our long range outlooks on Fridays that I also do for the company. Are just limited to 5 to 6 weeks in advance. Okay, that's it. We don't go farther than that because beyond that is really flipping a coin and it's a guess. There's some out there that put some very tireless work into seasonal forecasts, and I'm not trying to discredit what they do, but really and realistically, me being honest with you, once you get beyond, even 5-6 weeks in advance can be challenging sometimes. It's just when you go beyond that, you're really asked for trouble with expecting a winter outlook, especially, or any season outlook for that matter, to work out in your favor. Okay, so there's signals we look for. So we're gonna cover that in this video, and why you don't necessarily need to latch on to some ideas that are already some preconceived notions out there about how the winter is going to go that I just don't think is a very good idea right now, and I'll show you why. First, we're going to start off with the average snowfall for our area. These are major climate sites across the region for November and December, and you see it's not much snow, hardly anything in November. We really don't get a whole lot, except when you get up by the Wilkes-Barre area here, you might have a little bit more. On average, you have 3.2 inches of snow in the month of November. It's usually this, as you get closer to Thanksgiving, that you have something like that happen. And then in December, it picks up a little bit more here, quite a bit more actually, and that's at all of our climate sites. So we have a notable increase from November to December, and that keeps going higher in January and then even higher in February, which is the peak across our region for snowfall. So starting off the season, unless you get lucky and get something early on, you're really not getting, on most years, November snowfall. But December could be the same thing. You could have some years it doesn't do anything at all. We had blowtorch Christmases on I don't know how many years within the past decade. We can certainly have it go one way or another. So we'll have to watch for that as we go forward. But right now, again, there's no foreseeable winter storm threats on the horizon. Here's our year-to-date snowfall. Obviously nothing, so we got zeros across the boards, and this is where we should be year-to-date. Again, don't be fooled by these numbers here. I know that it has 0.2 here in Allentown, Harrisburg, and in Scranton it's 0.8. That's accounting for, the rare October snowfalls. That happens every once in a while. It adds to the average, and, because of that Halloween snowstorm that we had October 29, 2011, it kind of skewed these numbers a little bit. So normally we don't see anything in October. So to this point, having zero is not unusual, okay? So we're going to look at the upcoming winter, and again, the theme of this is that I've seen a lot of preconceived notions out there that this winter is dead and you're not going to get anything, and we're getting people already saying we got to throw in the towel and we're done, okay? I don't think so. You can't just take a look at the fact that everybody's predicting the La Nina coming in, the weak La Nina coming in this season, and saying, okay, well, that's it. That's a kiss of death. We're done. It doesn't work like that. There's intra-seasonal variability, and we're going to discuss some of that today. Okay, so this is what I call a paintbrush La Nina, which is the typical winter pattern in a La Nina, and you have all this colder air moving into the northern part of the country. And you see where the wetter portions are over the Ohio Valley here generally and the Pacific Northwest. It is drier and warmer along the southern United States and warmer even into, especially at our coastal regions. The further southeast you go, closer to the coast, you get some warmer temperatures. That is a typical La Nina. And the reason for that is in a La Nina, you have a southeast ridge influence pushing up warm air from this direction, right? So that, and the bigger that influence is, the stronger the La Nina, the greater the influence is going to be. Well, we know that for a fact we're not going to be dealing with a strong La Nina this year. We're not dealing with even a moderate La Nina. It's either going to be a very weak La Nina or remaining at ENSO neutral where it is right now. And I'm very skeptical of whether or not we actually reach that weak La Nina threshold. Now, I want you to look at something here. This is the official outlook, winter outlook for the National Weather, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, right? Here is their outlook. And this is about as close to a paintbrush La Nina you can get, okay? This is exactly what a typical La Nina does, okay? You have above average temperatures in these areas, and this is where the below is here. Look at that. See? Same thing. Same thing. Okay, all they did is just that's what they typically do. They say, oh, well, it's an El Nino or it's a La Nina. We're going to put our winter outlook on based on that, okay? And look at the wetter periods where they were. Again, typical is up here, Pacific Northwest, and also in the Ohio Valley. Look at their precipitation outlook. Oh, Pacific Northwest, Ohio Valley, Great Lakes. It's just this is a paintbrush La Nina. That's all it is. There's no real I'm not trying to discredit them and saying that there wasn't any thought put into this, but it seems that way almost, that this is something that you can say, well, it's a La Nina, so we're just going to throw up a La Nina map and what it does typically. That's not how it works. There's interseasonal variability that's going to affect how this goes. Are we going to have a southeast ridge dominating this entire winter? Probably not. And especially the weaker the La Nina is, or if it's not reached at all, the southeast ridge influence will not be as great or as often or as I already said frequent, didn't I? But either way, it's a this is the paintbrush outlook is never going to work out. Okay, it's never going to work out. So the chance, and they're doing this in terms of probability, and if you understand how probability works, which most people don't, if you understand how probability works, this isn't a bad forecast, because if you're going probability, assuming you reach La Nina, this wouldn't be too far off. However, we are not in a La Nina yet, okay? This has been something that has been, and I've been talking about this for those of you, the few of you that read the pattern discussions that I put in, instead of just looking for the chart on the long range that I put out on Fridays, right? Or the pretty pictures. You actually read the discussions. I've been talking about this for a while. And that is that we were sitting here at the end of last winter, and we're looking ahead to the following winter, because people do that, right? They look ahead and say, well, what's next winter going to look like? And they're like, oh, we're going to have a moderate to strong La Nina, and winter is over before it starts. Okay, this is what the chatter was going on back in March of last year. If you remember, Weather Weeklies goes through the end of the winter season, but if it's ending early and we'd see spring coming early like we did last year, there was no sense in me keeping the Weather Weeklies videos going. So our last Weather Weeklies video last year was in the middle of February already. We were able to say, okay, this is it. We're done. Okay. So at that point in the month of March, people were saying, well, we're probably going to have a moderate to strong La Nina next year, and that means winter is over. And this was back in March. Then we got to May, and people were saying, well, maybe it might not be moderate. Maybe it'll be a weak La Nina, but it'll be achieved over the summer. We're going to have a La Nina summer. Well, that never happened, okay? And it remained in ENSO neutral this entire time. And I'll explain what all this is in a minute, but see these numbers here? These are all the four different regions, the Nino regions in the Western Pacific. And I'll get into this more detail too. These numbers are all, except for Nino 3.4, which is negative 0.5 degrees Celsius, which is the cusp of La Nina. The rest of these numbers are all in neutral territory, which is plus or minus 5. And we're still seeing these numbers all in that plus or minus 5 threshold or range. Okay, so we are still in an ENSO neutral. The CPCA recognizes that. They said we're still in ENSO neutral. So it is still an ENSO neutral. We are not in a La Nina yet. Okay, so the whole point was this proverbial can, just getting kicked down the road further and further and further. And they were like, okay, well, we didn't get the summer, La Nina summer, so maybe it'll be early fall. Well, that didn't happen either. Now here we are sitting in the beginning of November. We're still in ENSO neutral, and the expectation was somewhere between September and November we'd reach it. Well, here it is in November. We're not there yet. Okay, so the can's been pushed and pushed and pushed. Do we actually get there? There's a chance we don't. The latest model projections for ENSO from the October 2024 update now shows that most of these are just right. You see the green line here, the solid green line that's going right across here? Those are the statistical models, okay, which are down here. These are these models, and then you have the dynamical models up here. They're both very close, but one has the dynamical models in red have a very weak La Nina being reached in the beginning of winter and then rising toward neutral again as we head into the second half of winter, whereas the statistical mean, which is the green line, doesn't even get it into La Nina at all. It keeps it about negative 0.4 on average. It gets close. I mean, it's, splitting hairs here, but I mean, it's still not quite there. The threshold is greater than, or actually in this case, less than 0.5 degrees Celsius. And the weak La Nina is up in this territory right here. So there's no models except for this one rogue model here showing that there's going to be anything stronger than a weak La Nina, even if it is reached. Okay. This all has implications on how winter goes. I gave you this of what a typical paintbrush La Nina is in winter. This is a typical paintbrush ENSO neutral winter, a little bit different of a look. Okay. And again, this does not mean that you're definitely getting cold and a lot of snow in an ENSO neutral. Everybody seems to think that. This is a paintbrush. It doesn't mean this is always going to work out. In an ENSO neutral, there's even more variability. Okay, you have less of a southeastern ridge influence, as we showed, or the weaker a La Nina would also favor less of a southeastern ridge influence, which keeps it warmer in winter, which is, if you're a snow lover, you don't want to see. So if you're a snow lover, you want to see it as weak as possible, so you're not dealing with the southeast ridge influences as frequently, or where they're to the point where they're just running the show for weeks upon end. You don't want to see that. Okay. Now, as far as La Nina, here's what this is what we're looking at for La Nina as far as sea surface temperature anomalies. The La Nina area, last year we were in El Nino. La Nina means there's cooler waters up in this region right here. And you see these lighter blues, or the blue colors that are in there amidst the warmer than average temperatures around it, which are in the orangish colors here, and even some reds up here in the northwestern Pacific. But there's some key features here I want to identify. One is this area right here, which obviously is the La Nina area, or trending toward La Nina, but it's not there yet. And also this cold pool that's up here in the Gulf of Alaska. This is a negative PDO, and this means that this typically favors a trough in the Gulf of Alaska instead of a ridge. If you want big amplification of jet with cold in the eastern half of the United States, you'd usually want a ridge here with high pressure. And it's going to be less favorable to see that this year because of this cold pool that's sitting here. So instead of that H being there, you'll see a lot of low dominance, or at least that's the theory. And again, this is what people are saying, trying to write off winter right now, saying, well, they got this negative PDO here, so winter's over. It may at times do that. And you're going to have this, because this kind of winter is one that I keep seeing people on social media currently talking about the current pattern, how it's this up and down stuff, right? With temperatures. That's typical of this point in fall, where it's kind of like trying to hold on to the warmer temperatures yet, but then it's giving you signs of what's to come down the road. So it does this roller coaster stuff, and it can't really lock into a pattern. That is typical behavior of autumn. But in an ENSO neutral especially, you can see a lot of this up and down, even going in winter. You could have 1 week where you have a very mild week, or most of the week is really mild, and then the following week you're ice cold and you're getting snow. And then it all melts the following week because you're back to warm again. And it keeps wash, rinse, repeat cycle. So you can have a lot of this year. I don't think this is one of those winters where you're going to be locked into a pattern for months on end, unless you have something like happened in 2013 where you had the EPO running the show. Okay, and we'll get to that here in a minute too. So these are the Nino regions I just copied from that previous image, which was this one here. I just took this and blew it up, this part here, just to show you where the regions are. And right now, the western portions of this of the Nino regions is actually is actually warmer than the rest of the areas further east. So for all intents and purposes, this is an east-based La Nina. The western portions up here out in Nino 4 are actually, by the latest data, since I showed you this, which was showing negative 0.1 Celsius, are now showing plus 0.2 Celsius. So it's actually warming because of a westerly wind burst that's going on near the equator in the from tropical forcing related westerly wind burst that's ongoing right now. It's an event that's going currently that's pushing some water further east and warming these waters anomalously here out in Nino 4. So you're getting some warming waters in that region. This was holding up the La Nina from developing. Okay, this is going to continue to keep ENSO neutral where it is and is not going to be able to develop fully. So even though it's cold, it's actually coldest out here in Nino 3, Nino 1, and 2. It's actually in La Nina territory, below the threshold or within the threshold of La Nina in these as far as raw numbers. You get out to 3.4, it's marginal, okay? And then you get out here in Nino 4, and it's actually warmer than average still because of that westerly wind burst brought in by this tropical convection, moving eastward. And this is an interesting thing here. This is going to be kind of the key to the winter, I think, and how it plays out in the in North America. I want to show you another picture. This is observed sea surface temperatures. This area right in here are the warmest temperatures, sea surface temperatures of anywhere in the entire globe along the equator. That's the warmest area. Now, for a La Nina, that is typically found out here in Indonesia, this area here. This is your phase 4, phase 5 regions of the Madden-Julian Oscillation. And that is why a lot of times during La Nina you'll see, this is called the maritime continent right here. This is all this area. That's usually where the warmest waters are. Well, they're not. They're further east. They're out here. So this is not behaving like a typical La Nina in a sense that it could eventually, become that and retreat westward and center itself out here, but it's not there right now. Right now it's farther east, and this is almost to the date line. The international date line is all the way out here, so it's getting close, right? So it gets close up to there, and you're getting if you get some of your warmest, this worm pool that's sitting out here to stay close to the international date line, like 150, 160 east, okay, that's going to have an effect on the EPO, which is so because of the convection sitting out here in phase 6 and 7 versus 4 and 5 will make a big difference on latent heat release processes, which can override this little cold pool that's up here in the Gulf of Alaska and then instead put a ridge here. And if you have a ridge here, you have cold in the east like this. Okay, so that's the whole idea. So is that going to happen? I don't know that. I don't know where this is going to go. Is the cold pool going to retreat? Is it going to expand further east? That's also possible. That's what it did in 2013, and that's why. Now, you did have a warm pool here in the Gulf of Alaska, which helped a little bit. We don't have that now. It was a positive PDO. Right now, we have a negative PDO, so it's a little bit different. It's not going to be as easy to get that kind of snow you had in 2013, where you had months and months of cold where it just wouldn't let go. And that's why I think you're going to be dealing with a lot of ups and downs this year. It's not going to be anything locked in. Here's those regions I was talking about. 4 and 5 are the maritime continent. That's typical of a La Nina, and the warmest waters are actually sitting out here at 6, 7, and maybe the western portions of phase 8. Okay, and so it's no surprise when you see the Madden-Julian Oscillation going through. They went through 6, 7, and now they're in 8 right now. Move through 1, and then it collapses into the circle of death. But this is the GFS extended ensemble that is starting to bring this back toward phase 6 again, bypassing phases 4 and 5 because the warmest waters are where? Right here. Okay, in 6 and 7. Now, the European model is not doing that. It's taking it all out the outside of the circle and bringing it through the maritime continent. These both could be right. I'm not going to say one's right, one's wrong. We just have to. It's just things we have to monitor, and this is a big part of intraseasonal variability. Okay, because whether you're in an ENSO neutral or a weak La Nina makes a big difference between what phase 6 and phase 7 mean, depending on what background state you're in. Okay, they have different meanings and they have different effects. And if this worm pool continues to dominate out here east of where it should be, that could have some downstream effects in winter. And these are all hypothetical. These are hypotheses. This is not me making declarative statements saying, don't believe everything you're reading here with the warm winters. Warm winter could work out. Okay, it certainly could. I'm not going to sit here and deny that. But I'm just saying it's not as cut and dry as people would have you believe, especially if it's an ENSO neutral, because there's so much variability. Perfect example. This is the Allentown, Pennsylvania area. This is the centermost point of our coverage region. So I'm going to use this as an example. Okay, there's some variability across our region here too. This is total snowfall that occurred each year over the last 30 years, right? Last 30 years, since 1994 up through last year. Okay, last year we did down here in the Lehigh Valley, 25.2. The average here is 33. That's this red line going from left to right across. Okay, the ones that I have dots next to, see that? All these dots, those were ENSO neutral years. ENSO neutral just within the last 30 years. And you can see how much variability you have. Everybody thinks ENSO neutral is great. Oh, we're going to have all kinds of snow. That's not how it works. You have some years that are down, like that. Like you have ups, downs, way up. Here's that 2013, 2014 year. But that was EPO dominated, negative EPO. And then you have a slightly above here. And then you have one that was really low here at only 5.3 inches. That was in 2019, 2020. That was an ENSO neutral year. Then we had that run of 3 consecutive years of La Nina, if you remember. Because the very next year after that, we had a very good year in Allentown, 2020 to 2021. It was a first-year La Nina of 3, but the next two, you see, went from 58 down to 19, down to 6. Okay, so, there's a lot of variability here, even within an ENSO neutral, which are the red dots. And I'm using the ENSO neutral here because I'm really not convinced that we're going to reach a weak La Nina. And if we do, it's going to be by the skin of its teeth. I don't think it's going to be anything more than that. And we just keep seeing things like that westerly wind burst I talked about near the equator, moving from west to east and pushing all this warm pool further east. And we've seen continual shots of that happening, okay, and having an effect on this warm pool and keeping it from retracting over and going back to the maritime continent regions. As long as the warmest anomalies of this waters are gonna sit out here, it's gonna favor the best convection because this is the warmest waters. It's the most fuel for thunderstorm growth of anywhere along the equator. So if your dominance is out here, that has the latent heat release processes from those thunderstorms will affect the jet stream and where it ventures. Okay, so it's not as cut and dry as people think it is. That's the point. Okay, just don't automatically assume like, well, so and so source says winter cancel and it's over. Not even. That's not necessarily true. Okay, there's a lot of factors intraseasonally that can change, and that's teleconnections too. Your ridge out in the western United States, your PNA. You got your blocking, which is the negative NAO, positive NAO, whatever. And then you have Arctic oscillation. I mean, there's a lot of different things with WPO. These all go into it, and depending if they're favorable that time, it can change things within a season. Okay, it's not going to be like start to finish we're done. That's it. There's going to be intraseasonal variability. This is one of them. This is the EPO I was talking about. If you can get a high to build here, because the warm pool's further east and it forces this ridge here into the Gulf of Alaska, well, then you get cold spilling. What goes up must come down, right? So on the eastern side, we get the colder temperatures and a favorable storm track for snow. Okay? If this is not here, and if it's trough dominated, which you will have some troughs in there at times, it's going to favor ridging on the western or trough on the western United States and a ridge in the east, which means we're going to be warmer, but it's going to be back and forth, up and down stuff, right? The North Atlantic Oscillation is another favorable teleconnection. Is what we look for when this goes negative, a big high parked over Greenland, we can get cold and snow here in the eastern part of the United States. Not so sure how dominant this will be this year because we have a very strong polar vortex, stratospheric polar vortex. We don't see splits this year, most likely. You might see some displacements or stretching, more likely, of the polar vortex at times when it's being tugged upon, but I don't see any evidence that we're going to see. This is not probably a good year for the polar vortex to really, rain on a parade, so to speak, right? Or help, or it's probably going to be hurt. All the cold air is going to be bottled up further north for the most part, unless you can have other things make it come into the United States, right? Here is the temperature periods in the short term over the next couple of weeks. You can see this up and down stuff I'm talking about. Again, we're using Lehigh Valley International Airport, which is the centermost point of our coverage region, as the example. Near average, then it goes way above again, then it goes down again, and it goes up again, and then it goes down again. So it's this roller coaster ride we're on. But this entire time, this red line indicates what average is, and which went from yesterday. November 2nd. It was 59 yesterday is the average high. On the 17th of November, it is 53. So this entire time, even though it's getting cooler, it cools off, it's still technically either near or near to slightly above average, okay? So this entire time, it never goes below average, and that's why we have in our November outlook a +2 to +4 degree temperature departure projection for this month, okay? It is going to be a warm month overall, and we think that's we're very confident in that. Most climate guidance, this is the latest, the European extended, and it shows the same thing, that +2 to +4 range for temperatures that we have projected for this month of November, and this agrees with that, okay? We will, in these videos, talk about winter storm signals when they appear. We don't have anything yet, okay? Again, it's early November. This is not something that typically happens early in November, so we don't have winter storm signals to discuss yet. We're gonna show you this just for argument's sake, again, using Lehigh Valley International Airport as the centermost point. Most guidance keeps November dry or sort of clear of snow or very little at all. It's not until you get to like the second week of December and toward the middle of December, you start seeing a couple little spots coming here. A couple of these ensembles are starting to pick up on something there. So I think if you're going to get anything that might be a signal, it might be in the middle, second week of December, or maybe toward the middle of the month. But before that, it's just probably nothing at all or something very little, okay? Especially when you have temperature anomalies that look like this across the region, it's going to be tough to get snow in that situation. So I'm not looking at much of anything in November. Maybe the far northern areas get into some lake effect or that kind of thing. So we'll see how that goes here the next couple of weeks. And I think that happens. It's probably going to be just after the middle part of this month, okay? You might have an opportunity for the northern areas to get some lake effect. There's a pattern actually looks kind of favorable for that once we get past the 15th of the month up by like Wilkes-Barre, over to Williamsport, I-80 Carter. You might have something there. We'll see. I'll see how that works out. So this is just kind of an overview, and the whole point of this was just to give you to question things. I want you guys to question some things here because we don't put winter outlooks out, so you're not questioning us. All I'm telling you is that these winter outlooks that are put out there, I don't want to say they're for entertainment purposes because they're very well researched in some cases, but take it with a huge grain of salt, okay? Because there's a lot of interseasonal variability, especially in ENSO neutral, where you can see so much variability. I mean, there's so many other factors. It's not just, oh, well, it's ENSO neutral, we're going to have a lot of snow, or we're not going to have a lot of snow. It doesn't work like that. As a matter of fact, 4 of these years here were below normal, some cases well below here in 2019, 2020, right? And some, the rest of them were above or well above, okay? I would say as far as analogs, people ask me about analogs all the time. Again, I don't do winter outlooks, so it's hard for me to say that. I would say, just based on a lot of different factors that I've looked at right now, if I was going to pick some analogs, I probably would pick 96, 97 as one of them. 2013, 2014 is one of them also, but don't get hung up on the 68-inch snowfall year part of it here. This only happens if the EPO is dominant. I don't expect it to be as dominant as it was that year, but it could be at times you could get some negative EPO influences, and if that's the case, you could get some increased snow from that. So that's going to be another analog, but not so much from the snow standpoint, just the fact that the sea surface temperatures are similar, except for the PDO that I talked about. And the other one would be this year right here, 2016, 2017. Those are probably the 3 leading ones, I guess, over the last 30. I like to take the last 30 years. I don't like people that go back to 1940, 1958. That's too long ago. Our climate has changed since then, so there's no sense in going back that far for analogs. Just in the last, that's 3 analogs I gave you here in the last 20 years. So, I mean, there's still some snow there. It's not like this kind of snow like in 2019, 2020, but you might be slightly below average. The EPO kicks in, you might go a little bit above. So I think that's the kind of winter we're heading into. We'll see where we go from here, but that would be my gun to my head call, which I don't do, okay? So you can follow us throughout the entire winter, of course, on these Weather Weekly videos every single Sunday, as I will do these and update different types of things until we start getting into actual snow threats. Once we do that, we'll get into, some thoughts about some storm signals and things like that, and expand on the long range that we do written every single Friday. If you want to be part of our premium forum, you can do that under the winter weather alerts. This link has been scrolling across the top of the video here in yellow. You see that scrolling thing, it has the address there too. It's our website and then / winter weather alerts. Okay. And then I'll give you the text alerts that we do throughout the winter. That program actually started November 1st. Some of you that had it last year already renewed. And then this is where you would have all the information about what we offer. These are the counties that we offer, that we cover for text alerts. The premium form is open to anyone. There's a year-round subscription for that, where we really go into model analysis and break down everything meteorological. Can you speak today? Meteorological. Every bit of every aspect of the storms we cover in great detail with all the meteorologists on the team, and do model analysis ahead of storms. These are things you don't see in the general public. So check that out. If you haven't checked that out already, that is a very good program, and anybody that's in that program will vouch for it, certainly. So I'm going to summarize here for today. Again, we're just going over an overview today here. That's it. ENSO neutral state currently, but do we achieve a weak La Nina at all this winter? That is the big question. We're going to follow that over the next couple of weeks. Milder overall November is expected with a transient up and down pattern with temperatures. We're not really going to be locking in to any kind of pattern. And I think well beyond that, too. I think we're going to go into this winter and have a lot of these ups and downs, too. It's not going to be locking into anything unless the EPO can help us out. We'll see. Take winter outlooks that you see with a huge grain of salt, especially if you remain in an ENSO neutral state, since there's a lot of intra-seasonal variability. That's going to be based on whatever's going on at the time globally. Okay, a lot of teleconnections involved here that can set us up for a good stretch for a while, then it'll be a not so good stretch for a while. Then you go back to good again, bad again, whatever. You keep going back and forth. But the intraseasonal variability revolves around what's going on around us at that time. So it's not just a cut and dry and say, well, we're going to have a snowless winter. Probably not. Okay, not probably. We're not probably not having a snowless winter. We'll see. We'll see exactly how this plays out. But there's a lot of things that can happen. One last thing I want to talk about was 2016, if you remember that winter. This is 2016, 2017, I believe it was. Yes. No, it wasn't. It was 2015, 2016. So that winter was the same thing. Everybody's like, "Oh, this winter's done. It's a blowtorch. We're done, and we're not going to get any snow. And we're wasting our time. And we're not going to. Snow lovers don't get any snow anymore, and climate change, and yada yada yada." That's all we heard. Now, the entire snow season that year was virtually snowless, except for one big storm that dumped 32 inches of this 36.2 here in Allentown, which is insane. All it takes is one big storm. You can still have that even in the absolute worst of conditions and worst background states you can imagine. So that can happen too. Even if it is going to be warm dominated this winter, doesn't mean you're not going to get any snow. It just means that as far as probability is concerned, you're less likely to see that. Again, I don't think you're going to be done with the Southwest Ridge a whole lot. Not as much as the paintbrush La Nina look here from NOAA. I think it's going to be a lot less of an influence than people think, and that opens the door for other possibilities for us to get cold and snow in other ways. I'm EPAWA meteorologist Bobby Marchus. That is this edition of Weather Weeklies. Join me again every Sunday throughout the winter season, including next Sunday. We'll have an update on a couple of these different things that I highlighted here that we're going to be watching over the next couple of months. Take care.